Good morning. It is Monday, February the 18th, and this is The Drill. And thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. And you and I, the whole country, have been brainwashed. We've been brainwashed into believing that where we stand politically is where we stand on the issues. And it is the Democrats that made that decision decades ago, the Democrats that then went ahead and decided what the issues would be, and surprise, surprise, that the issues all line up in favor of the Democrats and against the Republicans, that make the liberals look like heroes and make the conservatives all look like villains. And the purpose of this show is to show how it is that you, in your everyday life, can avoid the traps that the liberals have set for you and end up prevailing. This morning I wanted to go ahead and read from the Instagram op_Hawkeye, which is the Instagram account, and they memorialize fallen soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. And today is Senior Chief Petty Officer William Ryan Owens, who is with Special Operations Command, U.S. Navy. He was born March 5th, 1980, died January 29th, 2017, and he had the Silver Star, the Bronze Star with Valor Device, and I'm sure the Purple Heart as well, among other honors. And then, let's see. The next one is U.S. Navy Chief Petty Officer, he was a SEAL, Brett D. Shadle. Born on March 17, 1982 in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He enlisted in the Navy on January 31, 2000 and began his basic training at NTC Great Lakes, Illinois on July 25, 2000. After graduating in September 2000, he trained as an information systems technician from September 2000 to February 2001. He then attended BUDS training at NAB Coronado, California from February to October 2001, and after completing basic airborne training and SEAL qualification training, he earned his SEAL Trident in April 2002. SCPO Shadle was then assigned to SEAL Team 4 at NAB Little Creek, Virginia, where he served from April 2002 to December 2007. He then attended the grueling selection process known only as Green Team, where he was selected to serve with the Elite Naval Special Warfare Development Group, aka DEV Group, or SEAL Team 6. He served with DEV Group Red Squadron as a team leader and assaulter from December 2007 onwards, and during his career completed multiple deployments to both Iraq and Afghanistan. On March 28, 2013, CPO Shadle was sadly killed during a parachute training accident in Tucson, Arizona. He was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. Rest easy, warrior. Always remembered, never forgotten, the tribe. And so now is what I'm going to do here is get a clip. Let me get the, when I come back, I'm going to do a little bit of a clip from Rush Limbaugh's interview with Chris Wallace on Fox News. And thank you very much. Welcome back. And Rush Limbaugh, and he's being interviewed by Chris Wallace on Fox News.
He is the most listened to talk show host in America, who this week said the budget deal Congress handed the president was an outrage by both parties. Rush Limbaugh joins us live from his EIB studio in Florida. Rush, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. We're delighted to have you for your annual visit.
Yeah, and it's great to be back, Chris. Thank you very much for having me, as always.
All right. So I know that you are a constitutional conservative and originalist. Do you really have no problem with President Trump declaring a national emergency and taking money that Congress refused to give them?
No, I don't. I just listened to your panel, and I think it's all minutia. All you guys were talking about was minutia. Katie Pavlich had it right. We have an emergency. This is an invasion. The very existence and definition of American culture, American society, the rule of law. Why does nobody talk about the fact that millions and millions and millions of people are breaking the law, coming here illegally, and that the Democrat Party wants that to happen? We can't have the breakdown of rule of law and law and order this way. That alone would suggest that this has gone on way too long and needs to stop it. The argument about where drugs come into the country, can anybody deny that they're coming in and it needs to be stopped and it's destroying future generations of the country? We're so caught up in the game of how Washington debates issues. Is this a fact? Is that not a fact? It is undeniable that we have a major immigration problem and a political party that needs a permanent underclass of voters that wants that parade of illegal people who are uneducated, don't even speak the language. They want them here.
All right. And you and I have this agreement that I can interrupt you so I can keep things moving because, as Donald Trump said, you can go for 3 hours. All right. But I want to ask you about the game that you say we play in Washington, because the fact is that when President Obama took executive actions, you were outraged. And as you would expect, I've got a couple of examples of Rush Limbaugh over the years. Let's put them on the screen. In June of 2012, when President Obama deferred action against the Dreamers.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. But anyways, he ends up getting sort of trapped here, and it's inevitable because he didn't listen to the question. Right away, when Chris Wallace was asking the question, he qualified the question. He didn't come out, Chris Wallace did not come out and say, Rush Limbaugh, Donald Trump is going ahead and issuing an executive order declaring an emergency on the border. Does he have the authority to do this, yes or no? That's not what he asked. What he said was, as a constitutionalist, he said, you, Rush Limbaugh, are a constitutionalist. He said that you are an originalist. And that is false. There is nobody in this country. There's nobody on the face of the earth that is a constitutionalist or an originalist. That is a piece of fiction created by the left so that they could rationalize activist judiciary. The way this country was set up and the way this country was founded is that the purpose of government was to act as a neutral third party. This is what makes our system of government so great and why people want to come to the United States, because the promise is that the government will be neutral, that whatever disputes you have, whether they're criminal or civil, you can trust that when you go to court, that the person sitting on the bench is not going to be prejudging the case. You don't have to have pull. You don't have to know somebody. You don't have to be related to somebody in order to get justice. You present the facts as you know and understand them to be. The other side does the same, and then the judge applies the law and renders a decision. Okay? A neutral third party. In the early 1900s, an asshole, there's no other better way to describe him than an asshole named Herbert Crowley wrote a book called The Promise of American Life, in which he said that having the government as a neutral third party was wrong, was bad. He didn't have any particular reason for it. He just decided all on his own, I guess maybe he was bored, that that was not such a good idea, that the government should choose sides. That's what it means to have an activist judge. A judge is not sitting down and asking the question, does the president have the authority to do what he's doing according to law and according to the Constitution? What they're doing instead is asking themselves, whose side am I on? Am I on the side of President Trump, or am I on the side of immigrants? Notice I didn't say migrants. And then they render their decision based on that, based on whose side that they think they should be on. The immigrants are these poor, downtrodden folks. They don't have much power, so the judge sees it, I guess, in his or her duty to more or less represent them. That's not what is supposed to be going on here. That's wrong. And those judges should be censored. They should be run from office. Okay, because they are violating the Constitution. They're violating their oath of office, and they should be out. There is no such thing as activist versus constitutionalist. It's just right and wrong. And Rush Limbaugh missed that. And that's the strongest answer he could have given, is simply come out and say, Chris, you're full of baloney here. There is no such thing as constitutionalist or activist. There's only right and wrong. And the question is, are the judges acting correctly, or is the president acting within his authority? And then you go ahead and answer the question. You say, yes, he is, and this is why. Or, no, he isn't, and this is why. That's the way you should have answered the question. Otherwise, what you end up with is, and what you ended up with here, is Rush Limbaugh expressing his mere opinion. And then everything in life becomes not arguments about what is right and wrong. Those are issues which are worth arguing about. But instead, what ends up being real is that which is most popular. The question after then Rush Limbaugh opines is, how popular is his opinion? So you take a poll or a survey. Rush Limbaugh says this, Chris Wallace says that. Whose opinion is more popular? Whoop, it's Chris Wallace. So, hey, have a nice day, Mr. Limbaugh. And then what happens? We all get ripped off. We're all stolen from. It's no good. We also then have no confidence in our, there's no longer becomes really any point in listening to anybody. Why bother? You may as well only turn on radio stations, television stations that support your point of view. If everything is going to be reduced down to popularity, then why should I bother to listen to radio stations or watch television stations that may be telling me the truth, but are expressing it in a way that I disapprove of, or if I'm going to be approaching this from a popularity standpoint. I don't like it, therefore I'm not going to listen to it. And that's not what news organizations are about either. They're supposed to be about finding out what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's false, and reporting that. Okay, we shouldn't have to have left-wing stations or left-wing newspapers, right-wing newspapers, and all that BS. Okay, just have news people that are going to report the truth, not opinions, but are reporting the truth. And when I come back, I'm going to be reading from the Ayn Rand lexicon. Thank you very much. Welcome back. The Ayn Rand lexicon. It's the concept of the day, and I'm scrolling through. I was reading from fascism and fascism/Nazism the other day, and it was a long entry. So I'm skipping now to femininity. Femininity is the concept of the day. For a woman, qua woman, the essence of femininity is hero worship, the desire to look up to man. Quote, to look up, unquote, does not mean dependence, obedience, or anything implying inferiority. It means an intense kind of admiration. And admiration is an emotion that can be experienced only by a person of strong character and independent value judgments. A, quote, clinging vine, unquote, type of woman is not an admirer, but an exploiter of men. Hero worship is a demanding virtue. A woman has to be worthy of it and the hero she worships. Intellectually and morally, i.e., as a human being, she has to be his equal. Then the object of her worship is specifically his masculinity, not any human virtue she might lack. This does not mean that a feminine woman feels or projects hero worship for any and every individual man. As human beings, many of them may, in fact, let's try this again. This does not mean that a feminine woman feels or projects hero worship for any and every individual man. As human beings, many of them may, in fact, be her inferiors. Her worship is an abstract emotion for the metaphysical concept of masculinity as such, which she experiences fully and concretely only for the man she loves, but for which colors her attitude toward all men. This does not mean that there is a romantic or sexual intention in her attitude toward all men. Quite the contrary. The higher her view of masculinity, the more severely demanding her standards. It means that she never loses the awareness of her own sexual identity and theirs. It means that a properly feminine woman does not treat men as if she were their pal, sister, mother, or leader. And that is the concept of femininity by Ayn Rand from the Ayn Rand lexicon. And the lexicon is great because it is dealing with concepts. The left likes to materialize everything and pretend that nothing exists except that which we can touch and feel. Concepts which we cannot necessarily touch or feel, justice, femininity, are just as real as anything we can touch. And she conveys that excellently. Also, what makes her entries so powerful is that she states them in terms of right and wrong. She states them with absolute certainty. There's no waffling. There's no hand-wringing. There's no asking for forgiveness. There's no, in my opinion. She is stating femininity is XYZ as a matter of reality. Now, that doesn't mean that people cannot argue about that. That doesn't mean that she is automatically right. That just because she's able to state things in certain terms, or I should say perhaps no uncertain terms, doesn't mean she gets to be automatically right or correct about them. Okay, so there may be room for argument. I have a lot of arguments with Ayn Rand. But most people on the left don't want to argue about whether or not she's right or wrong about the definition of femininity. What they want to do is discourage people from communicating with certainty in the first place. It's called skepticism. So when I come back, I'm going to be, well, we'll see what it is I'm going to be reading from in a minute. Thank you very much. Welcome back. Let me see. I'm thinking about the 30 covert emotional manipulation techniques. Let me see. How about this one? It's from Out of the Ashes. It's a chapter called Accept the Lord, Build the House, Restoring a Sense of Beauty. John Sr., whose book The Restoration of Christian Culture is a late inspiration of mine, records the thoughts of Henry Adams when he met with his friend, the scientist Samuel Pierpont Langley, to see the Great Exposition in Paris in 1900. Langley wanted nothing better than to show off one form of engine after another. The dynamo, the thing that turns and transforms mechanical energy or creates electrical energy for other use. Assuredly, I would not be able to type these words on a computer if it were not for the things that are made to turn by wind or water or the burning of coal or oil or the heat released in the fission of radioactive atoms. I would be writing them with a pen on paper. Adams found it impressive and inhuman, and finally he escaped in his imagination to the cathedral of Our Lady of Chartres. The men who built Europe's greatest Gothic church did not have diesel engines or lightweight metals like soft aluminum or firm titanium or steel girders. They did not have cranes that could tower 100 feet in the air without toppling while lifting preformed blocks of concrete. They did not have computer models. They did not have the calculus. Most of them assuredly could not read. They had to fit stones atop one another precisely to be both balanced and beautiful, and that meant that the stones had to be cleanly and accurately dressed, shaved with saws, cut to fit. Their carpenters had to know how to build safe scaffolding from the hewn trunks of hardwood trees to soar 10 or 12 stories in the air, supporting the men who, with sledges and pulleys and main strength set in place the stones of lovely arches, springing on each side at exactly the same oblique angle from the pillars beneath to intersect one another at a point clinched by the keystone. It is not enough to say that the Chartres Cathedral is a great work of art. A sketch by Rembrandt is a great work of art. A single rib of a single pillar at Chartres is a great work of craftsmanship. A single panel of one of the lesser stained glass windows along the nave gives us art at its finest. Chartres is a magnificent symphony of countless works of sculpture, glazing, tiling, carpentry, masonry, and poetry and theology too. It is more than a museum or a collection. In a museum, one work is displayed next to another because it happens to have been created by the same person or in the same country or at around the same time. But every work in Chartres has to do with every other. I would say that there is nothing like it in the world except that, in fact, there are things like it. All the other great cathedrals of the Middle Ages are like it, all over Europe, and thousands of churches too. Some of them, the special churches for orders of priests, like Santa Maria Novella, the Dominican Church in Florence, and some of them just the principal church for a small town or a village, which would give you a kind of Chartres in miniature. At the Great Exposition, every entry boasted an inventor, but if you visit many an old church in Europe, you will see the frescoes or sculptures created by the master of any town, quote unquote, whose name no one knows. We still cannot reproduce the deep, rich blue of the windows of Chartres, but it is not my point here to compare medieval art favorably with modern art. It is to notice what it is that people believe to be most important in our common life on earth. If you went to the Great Exposition, you might suppose that the most important thing is to make machines that turn things, so as to work other machines, to do things we want them to do, or to make things we want them to make. If you went to Chartres, you would not need to suppose. You would simply and readily perceive that the most important thing was to sing with the psalmist, quote, "I rejoiced when I heard them say, 'Let us go up to the house of the Lord,'" unquote. And I like this because it deals with something that our society is letting slip away, and that is beauty. There is beauty, there is ugliness. What the left tries to do is suggest that there's some kind of a middle ground. And also because beauty and ugliness have to do with certainty of knowledge, and the left likes to claim that nobody can be certain of anything, then beauty and ugliness have a tendency to go by the wayside. You rarely hear people describe something as beautiful, unless it happens to be a sunset or whatnot. But works of art, things that are made by human beings, are not generally considered beautiful or ugly. People are not considered or spoken of in terms of beauty and ugliness. And it's to remind people that reality exists. And because reality exists, we can know things with certainty. And because we can know things with certainty, there are universal rights and wrongs. And that we can express all of that express the beauty and the ugliness, I suppose, in the world artistically. And that there is, as a matter of fact, beauty and ugliness, despite what it is that the left wants to say. That's why I like to say around Christmas time, when I'm giving Christmas wishes, I wish you reality, certainty, morality, and beauty, because those are the four things that the left hates the most. They hate it more than conservatives, hate it more than Donald Trump. So that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.